Today's date.
What is the date? The first?
Yes. Will you say the whole thing? What's your rule of thumb about lipstick?
What do you mean?
I mean, is there a rule that you would tell your daughters, or, you know, I'm just saying, if I was your daughter, would you say this is when you use lipstick or when you don't?
No, but if you want to look nice, you always have lipstick on. You should care enough about how you look.
But how early
Oh, I don't know.
What-
Today the girls start very young.
you think so?
Yes. I do. You're satisfied with how I look?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell me when to start.
All right. Say your name and the date.
My name is Anita Runkle Taffy. The date is September 1st, 2016. Peter is filming this in his backyard on the patio. I guess posterity. He wants to be able to see what I look like and sound like. I think that my age is important, that you know that I'm 89, and next June, this is September, I'm going to be 90 years old. I can't believe I am that age, and I can't believe I lived that long. But I'm grateful to be here.
How do you feel?
I feel wonderful. I try and think positively all the time. I
You
don't.
told me the other day you have a choice.
That's right. You have a choice when you wake up to be miserable or to be happy. And when you get to be my age, you're grateful for every day you have, and you don't complain about little aches and pains. And you pray you don't get really sick, and that you'll be lucky enough to go to sleep one night and not wake up. That's the perfect way to die. In
All
the
right,
meantime, I'm going to have a lot of fun, and I hope that I don't die for a long time. And being here is particularly nice because Peter encourages me to have a drink every night. You know that my husband, Peter's dad, died just about 6 weeks ago. And although I miss him, I will say to you that he never encouraged me to have a drink. He never encouraged me to do a few wild things. And I'm glad that I have Peter that will keep an eye on me and not let me get into trouble.
Okay, Mom.
What else do you want to know?
We're supposed to have a conversation. It's not a monologue. I noticed that you emphasize Anita Runkle Taffy.
Yes.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because in today's world, many women have three names. They carry their maiden name with them. Hillary Rodham Clinton is a good example. You didn't always do that.
No, but I feel now it's like the end of my life. And I have wonderful memories of when I was Anita Runkle. And I don't want to throw away those memories. I feel by using that name, it keeps my past alive and makes me think and be grateful for my childhood. And
But are you going by Anita Runkle Taffy?
no. If I sign a check, I sign it Anita R. Taffy. Most of all my accounts are Anita R. Taffy. And my Visa thing, I sign Anita R. Taffy. No, I don't use that name that much, but to identify myself.
Tell me how this glass ceiling with women has changed in your lifetime.
All right, here's a typical example. I went to college. I was class of 49. I would say that 90% of
At
the
Wheaton?
Yeah, I went to Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, not the one in Illinois, which is at the theological school. people went to college, and most 90% of the girls, female students, went to college to get what they called an MRS. They went to college to just round out their education and get married. There were always some girls that had careers, but most Jewish girls got married by the time they were finished with college. That was the role, and if they came from a family that had any means, they never worked.
But you
Women work
would
because-
suggest that was a lot of that MRS was based on heritage and religion. The Gentiles didn't want to get married.
Yes, everyone wanted to get married. I think all women wanted to get married. Our life was so strict and such cloistered life. Women didn't have the freedom they had. I mean, all you kept hearing in your whole thing is, you have to be a virgin to get married. You have to be a virgin. Don't be promiscuous. Don't let a boy touch you. I remember when I was a little girl and I started going to boy-girl parties, and the boys and girls were too young to go out like with things. They had a boy-girl party, and they used to play kissing games, and one of the kissing games was spin the bottle. I don't know. And if the girls spin the bottle and it stopped, the boys would sit in a circle, the girls would spin the bottle, and the girl had to kiss the boy that the bottle pointed to. And I remember when I was very young, and before I went to those parties, my mother said, "Don't be a fool. Why do you want to kiss anybody? If you go to a party you like a boy, kiss that boy. Don't wait to play a game and have to kiss some boy that you have no interest in at all."
Your mom, Viola, was born in 1900.
Yes.
But why don't you? She was
more modern than her children. Her children were more Victorian, and she was more modern. She was free-spirited. She had no parents after the age of 14, so she had no one telling her what to do. She experimented in almost everything. She did crazy things, and yet she instinctively had wonderful taste, ended up being a wonderful cook, a very good wife, although both my mother and my father had affairs on the outside. Not of any long duration, but they both wandered a little bit. But it didn't affect their marriage. They stayed married. My father died when he was 7. He was 7 years older than my mother. He was 72. I have such happy memories of my childhood, and they were very, very creative and adventurous. In those days, people didn't do what they did. They went away for 6 months, traveled the world. They did exciting things. They used to go to Nantucket and have a house there that they went to for summer after summer. They went to Key West before Key West was even anyone knew about it.
But I remember stories where Viola would go to Europe by boat.
My father worked very hard, and it wasn't until late in life that he could take a lot of time off. But my mother, even though she was a good wife, she said, "If you can't go, why should I not be able to go?" She was very emancipated. And she had friends, the Schwabs, very good friends, who were Alsatians, and they went to Europe all the time for business. He was in the handkerchief business. He had handkerchiefs made in Madeira. So they used to go once or twice a year to Madeira and go on to France to visit their family. And my mother would go with them. They'd take the boat over and the boat back. They didn't fly till much later. This was way. I think Joan, my sister Joan, on one trip, my sister was pregnant, and my mother and father both went to Europe. That was very early on. They always, and then when my father could get away, they traveled all the time.
Was Nanny involved with the women's suffrage and the right to vote?
I don't think she was actually part of this group. But she was very, very strong on women's rights. Tremendous. She went to India with my father on one trip. You don't mind my interspersing these little tidbits?
No, we like that.
And
But I'd like you to intersperse some wine.
well, she went to India and she was shocked by the poverty. And the little children with no family just wandering the streets. And I remember she came home from that trip and she made a big donation to Planned Parenthood. She believed in it. No one should have big families, that you should have what you could afford to educate and give advantages to. And she gave the money to Planned Parenthood on the stipulation that the money go for vasectomies so that she could control the population. That was early in those days to think that way.
Was that in the 30s? 40s?
No. That must have been in the 40s or 50s.
Do you think your childhood, the fact that your mother lost her parents when she was 14 years old, do you feel that that had some impact on your upbringing? I related to these, what they call Holocaust survivors, where kids of Holocaust survivors, their upbringing and their growth is different because of the trauma that their parents went through. How do you think Nanny mothered differently than,
Well, she was strict, but as parents they were wonderful. They gave us every advantage that they could afford. She was very frugal about things. I remember every one of her friends had a mink coat, and she said, I don't want a mink coat. I look better in a beaver coat. It's more flattering than the mink coat. She would have rather buy a beautiful antique for her home. She was a good-looking woman, and she dressed beautifully.
tall?
She was like 5'6" or 7", which was tall for a woman. I got dirty teeth.
Yeah, now you're
The nuts you gave me are doing. I'm lucky I have teeth at all.
So your mom, listen,
She
your
was
mom,
very progressive. My sister's name was Joan. We used to say we were more Victorian than she was. She was strict, but she was a liberal thinker. And
was she overprotective because she was afraid?
No, she was not.
What happened? Tell us about when she lost her parents to when she met Poppy and stuff. What was?
All right.
What did she do at 14, and how did her parents die?
Her mother died of cancer and was sick for a year, 2 years at home. She had double mastectomies, and her husband was too sensitive to change the dressings, and my mother used to say she changed the dressing. And she was very attached to her father. He was in the jewelry business. He had like private customers that he would go to bring jewelry to or shop for jewelry for them. He was like a private doing. And my mother, she was close to him because he would take them caviar, and he'd go down to the market and buy a pound of caviar, and then she'd help him put it in little smaller jars, and he'd take them as gifts to his customers. She adored him, but I think maybe she didn't adore him so much. It's just as the years went on, I think when you lose someone, you make them more important in your life, and they become.
So how did he
The
pass?
mother died, and after she died, the father went to the hospital and died. She never told me anything about what he died of, except
How
he
did
was
she
in the hospital.
survive at a 14?
Well, she was 14. She had a brother 7 years older who was best friends with my father, the man she married after that. So she knew Morty, when she was a little girl, because he was friends with the brother, who was 7 years older than she. And when he died, when the parents died, they left, which in those days was a fortune, $90,000 to each of the children, Herbert and Viola. The income on $90,000 in those days paid for her to go to boarding school and camp in the summer.
Who were her legal guardians then?
Herbert was a legal guardian. Herbert got married right after the parents died, and Viola, her mother didn't like the wife. She thought she was much too frivolous, and she wanted to go dancing all the time. And worst of all, came home from a honeymoon pregnant. My mother said, how could any sensible woman come home from a honeymoon pregnant? She was very intolerant of certain things, but she was smart and thinking. She said she didn't even know her husband, and here she comes home pregnant. So she was very way ahead of her time. And she didn't want to live, when her parents died, she had 3 aunts, and her mother's sisters. And they all said, come live with us, but she didn't want to live with them. They didn't live the way she wanted to live. And so she decided, I have enough money, I'll go away to school and camp, and I don't have to live with anyone. So that was very